In the name of the eternal, merciful, compassionate, and gracious Elohim, long-suffering, slow to anger, and abundant in goodness and truth, rich in steadfast kindness, extending kindness to the thousandth generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. I bear witness that there is only one eternal Elohim, in whom we live, move, and have our being. The eternal Elohim who will bring Israel back out of captivity and have compassion on Israel, and will again gather Israel from all the nations where the Eternal has scattered Israel. Holy greetings in the name of the only wise Elohim of the universe, creator of the heavens and of the earth, the Elohim of Abraham, of Yitzchak, and of Yaakov. Heaven and earth bear witness to the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, that there is no Elohim but the eternal, and that the Honorable Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew of blessed memory, the messenger who in 1919, during the season of redemption, founded Commandment Keepers Congregation of Living God, Pillar and Ground of Truth, also known as Commandment Keepers Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation, Beth Ha-Tefilah headquarters, also known by many other names collectively, Commandment Keepers, one religious corporation and not two. On this beautiful day at the synagogue located at 225 East Kenny Street, Newark, New Jersey, we greet you in Hebrew, in the ancient tongue of our ancestors, Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you. This oral history project is our story in our own words, presented through a series of video presentations in order to give an accurate account and clarify factual inaccuracies reported in articles, internet interviews, and other media sources. We refer to documentation in Commandment Keepers archives, remarks from the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, and excerpts from Commandment Keepers Minute Book, a short history of the work from 1919 to 1942. That at all times herein mentioned, Commandment Keepers is a religious, non-stop corporation with membership organized and existing under the New York Religious Corporations Law. We began part 2 of this oral history project, the American-Ethiopian connection, with the words of the Honorable Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew of blessed memory. Quote, "We believe the people Moshe led out of Egypt were black." End quote. Black Jews of Harlem, Sepia Magazine, April 1968, page 30. Commandment Keepers is one of the oldest Israelite congregations in North America and the Western Hemisphere. A visionary, Yosei ben Moshe ben Yehuda, an Honorable Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, born June 23, 1892, transitioned December 3rd, 1973, envisioned the return of the children of Israel to the biblical Mount Sinai, one of the most important sacred places, the mountain at which the 10 Commandments were given to Moshe by Elohim, and is one of the most significant of the stations of the Exodus. Exodus chapter 19. The stations of the Exodus are the 42 locations visited by Israelites following their exodus from Egypt, recorded in Numbers 33, with variations also recorded in the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy. For Israelites, Mount Sinai is a place of service to Yah. It represents a foundational monument, a foundational moment. The giving of Torah to the Israelites on Mount Sinai. Elohim proclaimed, "I am Yah thy Elohim." The opening phrase of the 10 Commandments uttered to the Israelites on Mount Sinai. The Lord, in Hebrew text translated Yod He Vav He. the proper name of Elohim of Israel, reconstructed as Yahweh. The Jewish Study Bible, Oxford University Press, 2004, page 111 through 112. The translation, God, transliterated Elohim. The normal biblical Hebrew word for God or deity, the revelation at Mount Sinai, transformed the children of Israel into Yisrael, or the Israelite people. Just as the Israelite people were taken out of Egypt to receive the Torah, so too commandment keepers was taken out of post-slavery conditions in America to receive the Torah. The acceptance of the Torah at Mount Sinai established the children of Israel's nationhood. Elohim told the children of Israel, I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you an Elohim, and ye shall know that I am the Eternal, your Elohim, which bringeth you out from under the borders of the Egyptians. For a heritage, I am the Eternal. That's Exodus, Shemot, chapter 6, verse 7 through 8. In 1919, it was from under the burdens of America that Commandment Keepers was founded. In a 1968 interview, the Honorable Chief Rabbi Wentworth states, quote, we are Ethiopian Hebrews, but our ancestors had been intentionally deprived of their national heritage on these shores and converted to Christianity in order to make them humble and obedient slave material. End quote.
During the 19th century, America struggled with discrimination, racial segregation, disenfranchisement, economic subjugation, and personal acts of violence against African Americans. The racial climate created a backdrop for the changes as many groups were formed to address the spiritual, psychological, economic, political, and social ills of people of color. In The Hebrew Heritage of Black Africa by Stephen Jacobs describes the African Israelite of the United States, quote, ruthless. This one word describes the black man in America. Ruthlessly torn from his African home, the black man was cast into slavery and denied almost every semblance of his human dignity. He was considered chattel, treated worse than an animal. After emancipation, he was left homeless, illiterate, impoverished, politically powerless, and without a family or social structure on which to draw substance of any value except the most meager. He had nothing but alien culture and spiritual substitutes to comfort him in his darkest hours of anguish. The situation in Africa was not much better. The black African lost all but a glimmer of his ancient heritage with the onslaught of Christianity and Islam. Even his native belief became diluted and lost almost beyond repair. End quote.
As early as 1808, black Americans had connection with Eastern Africa or Abyssinians, Ethiopians. The official name being Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. The Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated describes the beginnings of the Black American Ethiopian connection as follows. Numerous references to Ethiopia in the Bible, such as Psalm 68 and 31. Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hands unto God, provided refuge and salvation for Negro slaves in America and the Caribbean. Although physically separated from their ancestral homeland and amidst the opprobrious shackles of slavery, African American poets, writers, abolitionists, and politicians persisted in forging a collective identity, calling themselves Ethiopians, seeking to link them figuratively, if not literally, to the African continent.
As African Americans fixed their gaze on Ethiopia, Abyssinians also traveled to the New World and learned of the African presence in Americas. In 1808, merchants from Abyssinia, Ethiopia arrived at New York's famous Wall Street. While attempting to attend church service at the First Baptist Church of New York, the Abyssinian merchants, along with their African American colleagues, experienced the ongoing routine of racial discrimination. As an act of defiance against the segregation in the house of worship, African Americans and Abyssinians organized their own church on Work Street in Lower Manhattan and named it Abyssinian Baptist Church. In 1919, the first official Abyssinian delegation to the United States visits New York City, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. At the time, Woodrow Wilson was serving as the 28th President of the United States. In Abyssinia, Empress Zaditu, the eldest daughter of Emperor Menelik, was the reigning monarch. The main purpose of their trip was to renew the 1904 Treaty of the Amity Friendship between the United States and Abyssinia. The treaty had expired in 1917. This four-man delegation to the United States became known as the Abyssinian Mission. The distinguished delegation headed to the White House in Washington, D.C. after staying at the elegant Waldorf Astoria in Chicago. The group visited the U.S. at the time when blacks were by law second-class citizens and the most common crime against American blacks was lynching. African Americans were inspired to see a proud African delegation being treated with so much respect by the U.S. officials. Newspapers reported that in honor of the delegation's visit, the flag of Abyssinia, which is of green, yellow, and red horizontal stripes, flew over the national capital. The mission, under authority of Rastafari, extends the first invitation to African Americans to repatriate to Abyssinia. African Americans are astonished at how well respected the Abyssinian delegation is treated in the Jim Crow era.
In 1920, Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford, Harlem's African Americans Jewish leader and musical director of the United Negro Improvement Association, aka also known as UNIA, composes the song Ethiopia Awaken that becomes the anthem for the Ethiopian World Federation. The Ethiopian World Federation, EWF, was established in the United States in 1937. Its aim were to mobilize support for the Ethiopians during the Italian invasions of 1935 through 1941, and to embody the unity of Ethiopians, black people, home and abroad. The EWF was at first made up primarily of the Ethiopian students who came to America to study abroad. After the official coronation of Emperor Haile Selassie, it gained support from the black community of Harlem and denounced the term Negro in favor of an African and Ethiopian identity. The announced coronation of Haile Selassie in 1930 as the first black ruler of an African nation in modern times raised the hopes of black people all over the world and led Rabbi Ford to believe that the timing of his Abyssinian colony was providential. In 1948, Haile Selassie first grants 500 hectares of land in Shashamane, Ethiopia, to the Ethiopian World Federation, Incorporated members, which was comprised of black peoples of the world who desired to repatriate and see the motherland restored to her former state of complete independence and self-reliance through the cooperative efforts of the black race. The Abyssinian government had been encouraging black people with skills and education to immigrate to Abyssinia for almost a decade. Rabbi Ford took up this invitation and arrived in Abyssinia with a small musical contingent in time to perform during the coronation festivities.
In November 1930, Rastafari Makonnen Haile Selassie I was crowned Emperor of Abyssinia. The event blared on radios, and Harlemites heard and marveled at the ceremonies of a black king. The emperor's face glossed the cover of Time magazine, which remarked on Negro News in America hailing the king as their own. Emperor Haile Selassie began as an aggressive program, modernization, and centralization of the structure of the state. He ordered the drafting of the first written constitution for the empire, which was complete and promulgated in 1931. The first imperial constitution, which borrowed heavily from the Meiji Constitution of Japan, provided for a parliament for the first time in Abyssinian history. It is in this first constitution that the emperor officially renamed the name of his country from Abyssinia to Ethiopia, after recognizing the political significance of the name Ethiopia. In the Real Facts About Ethiopia, J. Rogers, writing of His Imperial Majesty, states, quote, lastly, in one of his declarations, Haile Selassie announced that he is the head, not only of Ethiopia, but of all people of African descent everywhere. During the Italian invasions of Ethiopia, 1935 to 1941, a group of prominent Harlemites who were leaders of the United Aid for Africans sought an audience with the Emperor of Ethiopia. His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, who was in exile in Beth, England at the time, to discuss financial matters. In response to their request for his assistance and oversight in providing a coordinated and organized effort to support Ethiopia in her time of need, His Majesty empowered his emissary, cousin and personal physician, Dr. Malaku Emmanuel Bayin, Ethiopian emissary to Black America 1936 to 1941. And on August 25, 1937, Dr. Bayin founded the Ethiopian World Federation, Incorporated, in New York. The Ethiopian World Federation established a constitution and bylaws with a lofty set of aims and objects summarized in this preamble. Quote, we the black people of the world, in order to effect unity, solidarity, liberty, freedom, and self-determination, to secure justice and maintain the integrity of Ethiopia, which is our divine heritage, do hereby establish and ordain this constitution for the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. End quote. It was now possible for all black people living abroad to associate themselves as being Ethiopians abroad. September 3rd, 1937, EWF President, its charter, and the early Rastafari leaders. Law firm of Delaney, Lewis, and Williams presents the charter of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated at the regular Friday meeting of the Ethiopian World Federation, 36 West Street, 135th West Street. In presenting the charter, Attorney Delaney said, quote, I never dreamed I would be called upon to serve His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I. Dr. Bayin has come to this country and has felt out his pulse and was able to accomplish his purpose. He knew what he wanted in charter. He knew what you wanted. An organ that would encompass the whole world wherever black people live, and he got it. You have a right, a charter, but without the work of each one of you, it will be useless. With this right, there is responsibility and duty. It gives me great pleasure to present the charter. Attorney Lewis emphasized the oneness of the black race everywhere, saying, quote, the destiny of the black man in Ethiopia is just as important to me as the destiny of the black man in Harlem. A black man from Jamaica or Trinidad or Georgia is the same. The white man has been trying to divide us on that issue for a long time. I believe in the omnipotence above and in the Bible. I believe that princes shall come out of Ethiopia. I believe that the destiny of the black man is in the stars and soon will come to the realization of his destiny here on this earth. The difference between black America and West Indians is that on the way from Africa, some of our foreparents dropped off in Jamaica and others came to the United States. Mr. Matthew E. Gardner, EWF chairman, said, quote, we will profit by the mistakes of the past. In spite of the past defeats, the work must go on until freedom is assured. The Ethiopian World Federation is the organization, not merely an organization. Unity of all black people in the United States, Africa, and elsewhere is our goal. Soon the white man, our oppressor, will realize that the black man is united. The main goal of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated is inherent in the name. The Ethiopian, meaning all black people, world everywhere, federation, working together. Many black Americans in 1919 had not yet come into knowledge of their true identity until the Honorable Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew I of blessed memory found the commandment keepers during the season of redemption of Passover in April 1919. Rudolph Windsor, in his book From Babylon to Timbuktu, A History of Black Races, described how large numbers of black Jews were forced to accept Christianity. quote, at the beginning of the 6th century, many Jews had fled to Spain. In 1616, after the death of Christ, the big shock came. King Sasbut ordered the baptism of all Jews in his domain under the penalty of expulsion and the loss of their property, end quote. The Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew of blessed memory had been a bishop in the Church of the Living God, the Pillar, and the Ground Truth, a Pentecostal church that had endorsed the UNIA. The UNIA, an organization founded by the late Marcus Garvey of blessed memory, decided to racial pride, economic self-sufficiency, and the formation of an independent black nation in Africa. It was during this time that the Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew began to examine the spiritual, psychological, economic, social, and political conditions of the Semitic Cushim Hebrew Jews, broken down as Semitic, a subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language family that includes Hebrew, Aramaic, etc. Cushim appears 20 times in the Hebrew Bible and means Ethiopians. Hebrews, biblical scholars use the term Hebrews to designate the descendants of the patriarchs of the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob also called Israel from that period their conquest of Canaan, Palestine in the late 2nd millennium BCE. Thenceforth, these people are referred to as Israelites until their return from Babylon exile in the late 6th century BCE, for which time on they became known as Jews. The Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew associated himself with Rabbi Josiah Ford of blessed memory and devout follower of musical director of Marcus Garvey, UNIA. Rabbi Ford influenced the Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew's perspective on religion and Ethiopia. Rabbi Ford's influence opened the door for the Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew, who embraced Orthodox Ethiopian Hebraic tradition. More importantly, the Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew began to identify with the Falashas, also known as Keilah or Beta Israel, the Semitic Cushim Jews of Ethiopia. The Beta Israel, meaning House of Israel, themselves claim descent from Menelik first, traditionally the son of Queen of Sheba, Makeda, and the King of Solomon. In November 1930, when His Imperial Majesty Imperial Haile Selassie I, King and Regent, Lion of Judah, and a member of the Solomonic dynasty, who traced his lineage to Emperor Menelik I, was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia. The Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew of blessed memory, having received credentials from Ethiopia and an official Ethiopian document authenticating the Commandment Keepers congregation as the Ethiopian Hebrews in America, began his declaration of customs and ancestry of the Ethiopian of Falashas Hebrews. The congregation was recognized as the Falashas in American and the Western Hemisphere. In the evolution of both the Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew and the congregation, the words, quote, Ethiopian Hebrews was eventually added to the congregation's name. Hence the revised name after 1941 became Commandment Keepers, quote, Ethiopian Hebrews, end quote. Congregation reflecting recognition of the congregation being Falashas in America and in the Western Hemisphere. In his minute book, page 19, under the things to be remembered, the Honorable Chief Rabbi Matthew stated,
Ethiopia is among the first countries of the world mentioned in the Bible. Ethiopia is the original name of the entire continent of Africa. In its second period, it was called the land of Cush. Epher was one of the sons of Abraham with his second wife, Keturah. The continent was named after him, Afra. King Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, was the father of Menelik I. There were 613 kings from Menelik I to Haile Selassie I. Haile Selassie's father was the brother of Menelik the Great. The Falashas Hebrews are the direct descendants of the tribe of Judah. He further states under the heading, quote, the anthropology of the Ethiopian Hebrew and their relationship to the Pharaoh Jews. I am the only The two classes eventually met in Noah and his wife. Noah was the son of God, of the godly son of God. He chose a wife from the daughter of men, the carnal minded, and to the time of the flood, and 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After the flood, Ham took the lead. Nimrod, one of his descendants, created the idea of the tower of the landmark of their capital, that if they become lost upon the face of the earth, they may have something to look for as a guide, and also a security against future floods. They called the name of their tower or city Babel, or Babel. Some have said that Babel means confusion, but this is not so. The word means coming to God. As Cush rose in power, Africa, the entire continent, including Mizraim, became the center of the world's cultural and religious education, and thus Ham secured for himself and his posterity for all time a name pioneers of the world's civilization. After the fall of Cush came Egypt, under Mizri, the second son of Ham, into power. He and Shem amalgamated by intermarriage, and the Mesopotamians were produced and interraced between Shem and Ham. After this came Abraham, the son of Terah. He married his sister Sarah, who was the daughter of his father but not of his mother. She was barren to him, but after many years she conceived by the aid of a Hamitic guide, priest, and brought forth Yitzchak, who in turn married Rebekah, his uncle's daughter. When she also, after many years, conceived, she brought forth twins, one red and hairy all over like a hairy garment, while the other was plain and smooth, as the black man invariably is. The first, the red and hairy one, was called Esau. The plain and smooth brother was called Yaakov. This same Jacob, by 4 wives, begot 12 sons. After 20 years, his name was changed from Yaakov to Yisrael, and automatically his sons became the sons of Yisrael. They went into Egypt and abode there 430 years. They mingled greatly with the Egyptians by the intermarriage, and thus Shem and Ham were merged into one great people. Of those who left Egypt were 600,000 footmen, twice as many women, 3 or 4 times as many of the half-bred, and a host of children. All those who had reached maturity before leaving Egypt died in the wilderness except Joshua and Caleb. Even Moshe, the greatest of all legislators, died there. But before coming out of Mizraim, Moshe had fled to Midian in Ethiopia, only to become servant to the Ethiopian priest whose daughter he eventually married and begot 2 sons. Those 2 boys were as much Ethiopian as it was possible to be, because they were created out of the soil and born in the land, as they were Israelites of the tribe of Levi, the priest, because Moshe their father was of the tribe of Levi and of the household of Israel. They of necessity had to be black because their father was black, and so was their mother. They were the first Ethiopian Hebrews of the tribe of Levi. They were half Hamitic and half Semitic. Then Joseph also had two sons by his Egyptian wife, Ephraim and Manasseh. These also were half Hamitic and half Semitic. I could go on endlessly to prove the direct connection all along the ages of the two greatest people that ever lived in the earth, but I must hasten along. This great admixture of two great people left Egypt, tarried in the wilderness 40 years, and finally came into the land of Canaan. Eventually David, son of Jesse, of the tribe of Judah, came to the throne of Israel, and in time his son Shlomo succeeded him. When Shlomo came to the throne, his fame spread the world over. And the queen of Sheba, whose name was Candace, queen of the south, she being also the children of Rachel, one of the wives of Yaakov, she also came to pay her respects and to make her portion of the kingdom subject to King Solomon. Eventually, she became the wife of Solomon. The son that was born to them was Menelik the first. The line of the Falashas are counted from Menelik the first to Menelik the great, who was the uncle of his imperial majesty Haile Selassie the first, the lion of the tribe of Judah. It is roughly calculated that before the war there were about 1 million Falasha Jews in Ethiopia, about a tenth of the population of 13 million. However, since the war, they have been greatly reduced, and fear is entertained for their continued existence. In Harlem, New York, there are about 3,000 adherents to the faith and who with pride lay claim to this glorious heritage. At the Central Congregation, 87 West 128th Street, New York City, there are about 800 registered. At 434 Franklin Avenue, Brooklyn, are also a goodly number. In Philadelphia, Medea, Pittsburgh, and Sharon, PA, are goodly groups. Also at Youngstown and Farrell, Ohio, Chicago, Illinois, Colin, VA, St. Thomas, and Jamaica in the West Indies. It is claimed by these that they are among the oldest families of the Jewish or Hebraic race upon the face of the earth, and that they are the only ones to retain their king to sit upon the throne of David, and outside of Palestine to retain the 6-point star of their money. Our manner and customs are strictly orthodox. We are strictly kosher. Our children are taught to speak the Hebrew language and to live in keeping with all the commandments. Yet I, of their day, am left to carry on the work of rehabilitation and salvaging of that which was lost. It has taken more than words to have proven to be the master of the great situation. It has taken constant contact with the source of this internal calling, even to be alive this day, or I too would have gone the way of all the earth, as my contemporaries have. I ask you therefore to pray for my preservation. When Elohim created the world, he took Yitzchak and created with him the world. He saw that it would not be able to endure, so he supported it with Abraham. He saw that it needed further support, so it took Jacob and joined him with Yitzchak. Hence, the world is supported by Abraham and Yaakov, and they are from the world. He who unifies the holy name must filthily join mercy and justice. And this is what supports the community of Israel in exile. Happy are those who guard the precepts of Torah. All Israel has a share in the world to come. I am Rabbi Dawi Yaakov Halevi, and this is Brother Al Yisrael from Commandment Keepers in Newark, New Jersey. We welcome you to come and visit Commandment Keepers at 225 East Kinney Street, Newark, New Jersey, every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Shalom, shalom.